It was a fiesta for illegal felons.
Everybody, hoo-hoo-ya, hoo-hoo-ya, el flauti.
A mariachi band firing up the wokesters at an anti-ICE rally in Boston, hosted by woke Mayor Michelle Wu. She was defending the city's sanctuary policies in defiance of the DOJ that's threatening federal action by yanking their funding.
Silence in the face of oppression is not an option. Stop attacking our cities to hide your administration's failures. Unlike the Trump administration, Boston follows the law. And Boston will not back down from who we are and what we stand for. Boston will never back down from being a beacon of freedom and a home for everyone.
Mayor Wu can serenade illegals all she wants, but here's the alleged child predators Boston's harboring. Bad hombres with rap sheets for crimes like raping a child under 16 and other horrific offenses. Meanwhile, illegals will be saying, shucks, at the new Cornhusker Clink ICE facility in Nebraska. It can already pop in 200 people, with plans to expand the bucket to 300. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's about to turn up the heat after President Trump asked her to add a coat of black paint to make his big, beautiful wall hotter.
In the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb. So we are going to be painting the entire southern border wall black to make sure that we encourage individuals to not come into our country illegally, to not break our federal laws, but that they will abide and come to our country the right way so that they can stay and have the opportunity to become United States citizens and pursue the American dream.
All right, Kellyanne Wu on a collision course with the Trump administration. How does that look like to you?
It looks terrible for her. We have a diminishing number of people now who are actually siding with people like Mayor Wu. Why? Because look what happened in March of 2025. Just a couple of months ago, the Trump administration goes in there and it's effective. They arrest over 370 illegal migrants. 200 plus had serious criminal felonies under their belts, including one 32-year-old jerk who had been arrested for the aggravated rape of a minor and some other offenses. They have also, Jesse, they've been successful this past May, over 1,500 arrests. This is working in cities like Boston. Boston was a melting pot for many years of immigrants. I'm half Irish, half Italian. Folks like that would go to Boston, but they'd have to have a job or a sponsor or both. If they came here as a known criminal, they didn't get in. If they became a criminal after they were here, they were pushed out. That's the way the American dream and the American system has always worked. I always say shine a light on the left, because when more people get to see how ridiculous their antics are, their foolishness, Mayor Wu, Jesse, is not just defying the Trump administration. She is actively saying to people, here's how to resist the DOJ's attempts to comply with federal immigration law. She's telling people, as the chief lawmaker of the city, she's telling people to resist the law. These are not just fighting words. I think that folks like her are putting themselves in tremendous legal peril. The other thing I would just say about it is that when she shows all these people, it just reminds me of the folks in my home of D.C. who are out there protesting. It's never the people whose communities are most affected. It's people telling you what the people in the most affected communities want you to do for them. In D.C., for example, the protesters are a bunch of rich white liberals who live near me in a nice part of D.C. It's not the folks who are saying, yes, please more police presence, please less homeless, please fewer drugs, please safe passage for kids to get to school and not crawl across nonsense. I also, the Tren de Agua, the MS-13, all these folks have been brought to heel in Wu's Boston because of the tough on crime policies. And as for painting the border wall black, President Trump wanted this done in his first term. He asked for this several times. There were a few Democrats in the Oval Office who didn't like that idea. I'm so glad Kristi Noem's out there with her own paint roller brush.
And a mariachi band, Jessica. When you set these press conferences up, does Wu say, Democrats, does Wu say, book me a mariachi band to lead in with it?
I'm not really sure how to do that. I do a lot of things, but event planning is not actually one of them. I haven't been one for the song and dance, whether you're, yodeling outside of the Department of Education or a mariachi band. But Michelle Wu is very popular in Boston, and Donald Trump's immigration policy is not. And you can tell what's going on because people like Stephen Miller and even, what we just heard are talking about an immigration policy that is not actually reflective of how it's being put into practice. That's why Donald Trump is down between 5 and 15 points on immigration. Only 38% support deporting all illegal immigrants. They were saying that they were going to go worst first. That is not how they're doing this. The raids at Home Depots and immigration courts, it's not sitting well with the American people, and it's having the opposite effect of what they wanted. We now have in the latest Gallup polling, 79% now have the highest view in recorded history saying immigration is a good thing for the country. And before you say, well, it's never about not liking immigrants, we just want you to do it the legal way. We just want you to do it the legal way. Part of that also was that they didn't want you going around and picking up people who had been here for decades and were positive members of their communities. Say about D.C. that it's all, white rich people that are doing the protesting. And I saw Stephen Miller said that as well. But the Washington Post is out with new polling. 79% of D.C. residents oppose Trump's takeover of D.C. police, including 80% of black residents and 67% of Latino residents. That sounds to me like a widespread problem of authoritarian overreach on the part of Donald Trump.
Well, actually, it's not because the country voted to get the bad hombres out.
But those aren't bad hombres.
Well, sure. What about the guy charged with raping a kid, Jessica? Under your
favorite.
rules, that guy's not a criminal because he hasn't been convicted.
True.
Yes, it is. Dana?
Well, just zooming out just a little bit. So you have a situation where you have Wu and Healy, the governor of Massachusetts, claiming states' rights, okay? Do you remember when Texas Governor Greg Abbott tried to send Texas National Guard to help defend the border? And the Biden administration said, you can't do that. That's a federal issue, but the feds weren't doing the job. So we tried to make it, the state was to go and do the job. Now you have what is a federal responsibility, which is border responsibility, border enforcement, which extends into people who are in communities, especially the ones who have committed crimes, accused of committing crimes. And they're saying, oh no, this is a states' rights issue? None of that makes sense. So they have a cognitive dissonance on that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Supreme Court tries to take this up quickly when they get back and do some sort of expedited thing, because I think that the country needs more clarity. I think the governors need more clarity, the mayors, and all of the new ICE agents, because this is going to get clogged up in the courts unless there's some sort of clarification, or you're going to have other problems. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell how the D.C. crime thing is actually going to turn out in terms of results and also public opinion. If crime gets under control and people feel a lot safer, then those numbers could improve dramatically. I think it's too early to tell.
Greg?
The only poll that matters happened in November 2024. You don't have to listen to the Washington Post. You don't have to listen to these polls anymore. They lied to you. They were wrong about everything. Has anyone in the legacy media ever asked the liberal leader how many illegals are in your city or your state or your country? It seems to me if you wanted to really fix a problem, you should at least know the size of the problem. And what does that tell you? They never saw it as a problem. It was just a solution to pad up the census. But if you're filling a bucket and you don't care if the bucket can carry those gallons, it's either a sign of mental illness or sabotage. So now we're stuck cleaning up the mess, and it's not pretty, and we're getting yelled at for doing it, but we're doing it. Homes weren't vetted for these migrant kids. You didn't know that because you didn't count them. So now we're stuck being the bad guy for cleaning up your frickin' mess. You know, the Dems should be happy because remember how they fretted about how the illegals would no longer mow their lawns or wipe their asses or trim their overgrown bush? Good news, there's still plenty of low-wage workers willing to do the jobs that were beneath you. And get this, they're getting paid more because there's no competition from the cheaper labor, i.e. the slaves that you imported over. Should the party that was always screaming about living wages, shouldn't they be happy that Americans are finally getting paid a little more now that you got rid of the illegal labor? No, they're not, because they didn't do it. They didn't want to do it. All about the census. Once again, how would you do this differently? Would you no longer deport? Would you no longer deport the worst first? It doesn't matter because you conflated both. from the start. Just like you're doing with the Mariachi Band and MS-13. To you, it's the same damn thing. Legal and illegal, worst first, everybody, it's all the same. But the White House distinguished worst from the first. In order to do that, however, you have to go through the millions of people that you let in. That's how you find the worst. Surprised you don't even cooperate with that through your sanctuary city mess. This is another issue, Jessica, that you have lost the right to complain. You broke it. You don't get to tell us how to fix it. That is our job. They didn't vote Trump in. They voted you out. And if we listen to you, it is a betrayal to them.
Well said, Greg.
Face.
And I have not noticed any ungroomed bushes, and I've been looking. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.